summertime, you're smiling.
Aerobics, it's been the whole weekend paddling.
Sorry to interrupt. Welcome to
This is our social time.
Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. Since June 26th, we'll do a quick roll call. I'm Councilmember Risberger, Councilmember Davies, Councilmember Carson,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Okay, first off, acceptance of the minutes. We have the minutes for May 30th and June 13th. Special meeting on June 13th. Did anybody have any changes, corrections? Okay. All right, I am going to move deer management to the end. I think we have a lot of other items that will go relatively quickly, and that one's usually the one that we're working on quite a bit more, unless anybody has any objections. Okay. I'm going to open it up to the public for any public comment. If anybody has any questions, just state your name, your address. I will reopen this up before the deer management, before that discussion also. So does anybody have any comments?
I'm done.
Okay. All right. Then Neowa Park 5K race course.
So I've been unable to connect with the folks from Ainsley's Angels, which is the organization the Faith team had suggested, and she had forwarded my email to them. I also haven't found any specific specifications online for course design. Accessible course. I'm not sure maybe that other contact you're going to talk to.
Yeah, I actually sent a note to the USATF group out of Utica, and I think they forwarded my email on because I got an email back from the director of Achilles International down in New York, and she gave me a lot of info, but I would concur with what Greg said. I didn't find any kind of specifications on course design at all. But I can read you really quickly what she said to me. She says, "Hi Dave, my name is Ariel. This is Ariel Rousen. I'm an employee at Achilles and a former professional wheelchair racer. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and efforts to include adaptive athletes in your events. Your questions are a little bit conditional on the individual athlete, weather conditions, the slope of the street, path, the number of other runners, etc. But I will try my best to answer them." So my first question was about the width of the pathway, mainly along the new pathway we're going to develop, and also the pathway along the mill race. And she said 6 to 8 feet is on the narrow side, but definitely doable. If the race has thousands of runners, which we are not going to do that in the park, we just don't have the room, then I imagine it would be very difficult for a wheelchair racer to navigate. But I'm assuming your races are smaller. Something I would definitely suggest is having an early start for the wheelers or any other athletes with ambulatory disabilities who may need more time. A 10-minute head start is usually great. This can really prevent congestion at the start of the race. I would just make sure you communicate the early start information on your website or wherever you post the race details, so wheelers and AWD know to get to the start line a little early. I'm assuming AWD is other wheelchair or other racers that have ambulatory issues. My other question was about a 90-degree turn, because I believe we had a couple of them in the race course. And she said a 90-degree turn will absolutely be okay. Athletes will need to slow down to make the turn safely, but most athletes will know that if you really want to go above and beyond, you can make a sign indicating an upcoming turn and to approach carefully, but she didn't think this was going to be an issue. And my second question, give me a second here. And I thought I had my questions in this email, but I don't. But the other one was, it was about the doubling up on the loop, because it's a 2-loop course. She says it really depends on the number of other runners on the course, but if the wheelchair athlete was at that section alone or with just a few others, those will be fine. Another thing I would suggest is to have a bike guide, if possible, per wheelchair athlete. The biker can help move other runners out of the way by pedaling a couple meters in front of the wheelchair athlete. I always appreciate when races have this available for me, and it makes me feel much safer. So I think that's something that maybe we'll have to address, or the city can address, depending on the race that's taking place. So, but that's what they provided, that's all I have. So, I have no, I mean, based on what she said, I have no concern anymore with the course. I think if we have problems, we can adjust and adapt and go from there. Thoughts, guys?
So moved.
Second? Any other discussion on it?
I think this is a good opportunity to create a self-contained 5K. We accomplished a lot of objectives here, so yeah, I think it's good.
The last thing I'll add is, and I said this to Greg, is it would be nice to have another USATF course in Oneonta, because the Tit Run was one, and that's where you get, that's a really big draw as part of the USATF circuit. Right now, I don't believe we have any, but I think if we have one and it's a bigger draw, that's the time to have that race outside of the park. So, Scott, do you have anything to add at all?
No, I actually talked to Greg, when the Girls on the Run was down at the park, they used the course. And there was just a couple notable things that I saw, but it's stuff that we can work with the organizers with.
How big was the race?
It was a good size, they had a bunch of schools down there. The mill race, they bottled up a little bit. But if I remember right, I think they ran it backwards from what was on the
They
sheet.
had the original map.
Yes.
And then we reversed the course, so and to your point, if they had run the other direction, we would have had as much of a problem.
Yeah, that, and they had, they let traffic continue going through the park, where I think you have to close the
Okay.
park down.
All right.
Scott, is that the only bottlenecking?
Yeah, that's the only bottleneck I saw. Granted, I'm not a runner, so it took me a little bit to get from point A to point B to be honest with you.
May I say
Well,
something?
okay.
Scott let me know about that. I talked with Lou and she was following up with the race organizer to let them know about that.
I suggested they do course in reverse next year, I don't think I've heard anything else back yet.
Yeah, because with leaving the traffic open, it came across the start-finish line,
Yeah.
so it should just, if we're gonna have, they just really plan on closing the park down.
Yeah, I think maybe we could have a review, or either this council or the next council, with the next, depending on when the next race is, and see how it is when it's run the other direction, see if there's another problem. I know the Hot Cocoa 5K is usually in the end of October or early November, but there might be another one, and that's a big draw, but there might be one before that too, so.
I think,
I just,
Carrie, isn't there one, is it the Rockenberger?
The Rockenberger 5K, that'll be September-ish.
There's a
Okay.
park group, right?
They haven't given me anything yet, but that's where they've been encouraged to.
Oh,
I thought there was one other that said they would do it. I couldn't remember.
There have been many that say they will do it, we've received applications from them indicating that they will be doing it.
Okay.
can
All
I
right.
just,
No, not right now.
just
Do we have a vote then? Are we all in favor to move this forward? Good? Okay. All right. Next one is the Deed Street closure for a welcome event. This is the welcome event that is done by the ad hoc committee that the mayor put together, mayor's summer reception for newcomers. And this is the closure on Deed Street from Main Street to,
They're proposing up to roughly the community bank parking lot, entrance exit. I'm not sure, does everyone have the map?
yeah,
We don't have anyone from that group here tonight, but
The last page of their packet says.
oh, it's this map, not this map. Not this one,
It's an inset of, yeah,
okay.
As you
so,
can see, we had some issues.
so they're proposing Deep Street closure from Main to Wall, including that intersection, including the Wall Street from intersection of Deep to, basically where that secondary exit from the Wall Street lot is. And then they're proposing a one-lane closure of Deep Street from Wall north to roughly the Community Bank parking lot. The intent, as I understand it, is to allow vehicles to come down Deep Street and enter into the Wall Street lot and then exit Wall Street lot on the Wall Street side. I'm not sure, so this map is all we have as far as the layout of things. They're talking about having some food trucks, some lemonade stands, other sort of things going on. And I believe their application indicated 45 attendees roughly over the 3-hour period, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, August 12th. My question to them, which I think I would suggest to you to consider if it works for them, is just having this close Deep Street from Main to Wall. I think that the other section might confuse things a bit, make it a little bit more confusing for drivers than it maybe needs to be given the low number of attendees they're anticipating. I haven't been part of their meetings or have had one-on-one discussions with them, so there might be a reason why they think they need more than that. That would be a consideration that I talk over with Chris and John. It would be something we would recommend they consider. You know, I don't know how many food trucks they intend to have. They could use the parallel parking spaces that exist on Deep Street now. If there were not enough room between Main and Wall. That's not to say that their proposal isn't doable. It's just a little bit clunkier, maybe a little more confusing than we'd like to put out there.
Thoughts?
So I sit on this committee and I agree with Greg that this is the first time I've seen this laid out. You know, I sit on the committee. It would be not the safest layout to have for anybody. I know I personally would not feel safe being on Deep Street one half of that lane, experiencing what it's like just for the parades down off of Market.
Len, do you think they did that because of the food trucks?
You know, I don't think it was a commitment. I know there was quite a bit of discussion about food trucks and then having the actual downtown businesses have tables set up to sell their food. I remember that discussion quite a bit. I don't think we had actually made contact with any food trucks, so. But given 45, I think is reasonable to show up for attending this event. But to Greg's point, just closing off from Wall to Main, I think getting the events that we're looking to do would fit in that space. And then we would know that everybody would be safe.
Yeah, that was my first, I looked at that and immediately was drawn to the challenges of that, as well as it almost feels like we'd be letting traffic come down there and then through the parking lot exiting, that we're gonna turn around earlier and just turn around rather than have kind of use that parking lot as a thoroughfare. So I agree. I think that, I mean, we've seen it in the past where we've had that section of lanes closed off, and we put a lot of people in that area. So I definitely think given the numbers 45 or even double that, I think we'd be very safe in terms of numbers fitting into that pretty easily.
Scott?
I agree with them.
What does everybody think about if we blocked off the parking spaces in that area for the food trucks? Or should we just leave it up to them to deal with it?
Leave it up to them.
You know, they could park on that side. That would work well for them with the sidewalk. I get what you're getting. See what you're getting at.
I'm just thinking making room so they're there, but we have no idea how many food trucks. Okay.
This also ties in those two alleyways that we're trying to revitalize. And if we close off Wall to Main,
Yep.
so kind of ties into that thought process. So that would be a big start, having events there.
Well, I agree with all of you. I don't like the idea of blocking off only half the road. I think it'll be confusing. A lot of people don't realize that parking lot, there is an exit discussion about this? Do we have a motion do we need a motion to accept this?
Well, I would make a friendly amendment to their application.
Sure.
Have the barricades from Wall Street to Main Street to be
This is a new street closure, it's something that typically go to council, for a motion to approve. I'd like to ask them to give us a little more detail if they can, as to where they think food trucks would be laid out, and just indicate that there's gonna be a clear need for emergency vehicles, the usual things.
Yeah.
So we can follow up with that. I'll have this on Tuesday.
Okay. Wednesday, that's right. Okay. Any objections to this? Can we move it forward?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Miller Street closure for a block party. This was, we have the application from Laura Carpenter. This is, down on Miller from, River to Henry, thank you. I was looking at this earlier and just refresh my memory because, I mean, we used to have every single year a block party on my street. They don't have to have the liability insurance coverage, correct?
They, in lieu of liability insurance, they provided us with an indemnity of doing this.
Right,
Yes.
okay. All right. And they just need the street closure done by DPW, correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
Greg, I believe there's a plan in place.
For something like this, a side street off River, just takes a few barricades, given it's on Saturday, and to reduce the need to have DPW come in overtime, it's probably something where we can work with them to drop all the barricades on Friday, have them sign volunteer waivers indicating that they're going to put barricades in place according to the map we give them, which is just on Miller Street at River and Henry.
Yeah.
And then we'll come pick them up on Monday, as long as that works for DPW.
I know that's what's been done in the past for other block parties, so that usually works. All right. Anything anybody wants to add to this? Thoughts?
Do we typically ask if there's like community support for that road closure? Because say you only have one person applying, but they haven't asked the neighbors.
That's a good question. How does that usually work when the permit is applied for? What do they have to provide showing that there's support?
They are not required to provide anything as part of the already established process. There's generally conversation like, oh, we try to, what do your neighbors think about this? Who's bringing what, that kind of deal. She's indicated in her letter to us that she's spoken with the neighbors, she has the support of the neighbors. And then she also provided in a packet a copy of the letter that will be going out to them as well.
Right, that's here. Okay, this has not gone out to them yet, though.
She is pending approval.
Okay.
She has reached out to them, and a group of them have expressed interest. That formal document has not gone out.
Okay. All right. I think as long as they know that if you live on the street, you can still get in and out with your car, or make arrangements that have the car down at the end of the street.
To be able to access.
Yeah. I think that's always helpful.
And that stuff we can firm up with her when we speak with her. The permit is approved.
Yeah. Okay. Thoughts?
What a good thing.
Scott? Joe Ward?
We've had many street closures in our ward. For stuff like this, I think this is a great way to bring community together, neighbors together, so.
Is there any thought to establishing general guidelines for block party type closures, maybe streamline the process, something you think Carrie can tell in the future, make sure you provide this? I don't think it's really well defined now, although we have very many of them. But we did just do the Main Street closure guidelines.
I mean, we could include a requirement requirement to have a letter sent out to the neighbors, or you could have a, I don't wanna call it a petition, but some kind of petition that you have a certain percentage of people sign maybe, I don't know. Cause they could be impacted by, if you do the percentage of signatures for the percentage of homes on the street, what if half the street are student rentals and there's no students there, so that affects the percentage. So I'm not,
I think the
Sure.
letter to the neighbors is fine, but, and I agree, the idea of creating some kind of, a little bit more streamlined process. I mean, I think this is the good things that we wanna encourage, or not discourage, I guess, in terms of how we require folks to go about petitioning or requesting these disclosures.
Scott, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree with Mark. I think each individual ward's gonna have their own, concerns on how you do it. Because, not one word's the same, the way it break up, but I mean, anything you can do to get neighbors closer together and to bring community together, I think we should encourage something like this.
Maybe we could add this to our agenda to discuss just a policy, very streamlined policy for it.
Yeah, I think, I kinda agree with Greg. I mean, at least something that you could, if somebody's interested here, this is kinda what we're looking for, this is what you have to do, kinda
Yeah.
help out everybody, so everybody's starting out on a fair playing field.
Even the whole
Yeah,
indemnity.
there you go.
I mean, I wasn't aware of that, so I mean, that, even just having that streamlined, so folks can use that as a model if need be, or whatever they might need to. I agree, I think that'd be real easy.
I wish him luck. I hope if we pass this at the council, because this has to go to the council, right? Because this isn't
Yeah.
too.
Len, thoughts at all?
No. Looks good, but I understand what everybody's saying on the committee of, have we asked or got in front of a majority of the neighbors, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we'd want to define that, but,
Probably I'm almost thinking almost like when something comes up in front, like the zoning board or something like, you have a small radius that you gotta send out, and that might be you gotta at least send out letters to that radius, saying that this is what you're gonna do to give ample time for if somebody's got a concern or something.
I think that makes sense, Scott. I think if they were to first contact the clerk and have an initial conversation, is the city gonna entertain closing the street? If they're asking to close Chestnut Street, sorry, no. But if they're talking about Fonda Ave or something, that, side street that makes sense, you can say, yeah, this is approvable, now send out your letter to whatever residence radius and let us know if there are any objections. I don't think we need to have a response, certified mail or anything crazy, but if there are someone,
Yeah.
one of the neighbors or one of our neighbors object, they can let us know. That way the council would have an idea of what the general feeling is.
You would think the host would want to know it also, they would want to,
Yeah.
overwhelming about a negative blowback on how the streets look.
Kind of the opposite of the idea.
but, I mean, like we said, each street's different too. I mean, you have small streets that everybody knows everybody. So, I think it's a good idea to, discuss this at a future meeting and try to, streamline it a little bit. But in the meantime, I have no objections to moving this forward. I think it's a good thing. Okay. Okay, Park Pavilion alcohol permit policy.
Okay, we talked about this a bit last time. Committee asked the staff to come back with a recommendation to update our alcohol permit policy to include a deposit and also consider increasing the fee for application. Speaking with Carrie and others, we would recommend keeping the fee at $25 as it is now. It's a very simple process to accept the application and process it. The deposit is the thing that we think might make a difference. So if we were to implement a $500 deposit, and define, and, you know, that would be kept in the event that there is damage to the pavilion, tables, grills, bathrooms, you know, immediate area that is being rented, or if there's cleanup required by DPW beyond what is to be expected. Obviously, that's cleaning the bathrooms after the fact, normal sort of things, cleaning up the garbage from the garbage bins is expected, but yeah, things being where they're not supposed to be might be a reason to keep the deposit. We would say that if the deposit is not returned for one of those reasons, and or there are founded noise complaints or other issues requiring Oneonta Police Department intervention, the permit holder will be banned from future pavilion rentals. Obviously, the expectation is people are going to rent the pavilions, use them responsibly, clean up after themselves, and not require a police response. So I think that including that language up front sets the expectation, and hopefully we avoid having those issues. But if we did have issues like we've had in some cases in Wilbur Park, then, you know, you'd lose the privilege to be able to rent the pavilion in the future.
You're not saying that the deposit would not be returned if there are noise complaints, correct?
Correct. We were viewing it, a noise complaint, or if there's speeding, there was concerns about speeding near the park. Those are sort of separate issues that can be addressed through other legal mechanisms.
Okay.
Are you prorating that deposit, or it's all or nothing? So if there's a noise issue or a speeding issue, the $500.
A noise or speeding issue, a police issue would not affect the deposit. The deposit's more for the cleaning or if there's damage, that sort of thing. And in that case, our initial thought was it's all or nothing. We're not going to track time and materials exactly.
Do we have a written version of this yet?
No, but we could make one.
We wanted to make sure it met with the expectations of the committee before we formalized it.
Okay, so are we looking for a vote on this today to move it forward to the council, or would there be a written version?
We could bring the written version forward to finance, because there would need to be a fee
Oh,
schedule
yeah.
adjustment, so we could do that Thursday for the
Okay.
council next meeting. Agreed.
So, thoughts?
I would like to see noise or speeding have an effect on the deposit. This goes with the citizen who represented others on our street that they were concerned about the speeding. It represents their concerns about the noise. So not to quiet their concerns, I would like to say that we look at the deposit being affected by noise or speeding.
How would you attribute the speeding to that's,
What's that, Scott?
how would you contribute to speeding, though? That person that was speeding is part of that? That'd just be my only hang up with that, because I'm not sure how you could contribute that.
And I completely understand where Len's coming from with this. I've been debating this in my own head. I was looking at it though with a noise complaint. What if it's somebody that's just being a little too touchy about the noise and they call the police? And as far as the speeding goes, what if it's not the permit holder, or what if it's somebody else? I think it could get a little tricky, trying to have that impact the deposit. That's the only thing.
Even with the noise complaint, they can still get issued a noise ticket from the city PD.
That's true.
And they could also, if it's founded, I suppose, you know, as the police
And they all-
discretion, they wouldn't be able to get another permit in the future.
Right, to your point, I agree with, I understand where you're coming from, and I really agree with that, I don't know how you contribute to this.
Yeah. The other thing that we could think about is this is a start. It's something that can be adjusted every season if we need to. If it's not working, we still have more of an issue, or the noise and speeding is continued to be an issue.
So if there's more than one complaint on the noise, would that help you guys? There was multiple phone calls. I guess that would be relying on the police department to tell us that there was more than one phone call.
Well, ask the chief if it's, well, he said that it's easier to regulate the parties when they're in the house, right? Yeah.
Yeah, cause you have that owner. In the house, they'll go right to that owner and
Right.
cite that owner for,
Yeah, how
Do
would
that
you?
For the officials.
I would think you'd go and find the permit holder. The permit holder should be on some, right?
Yeah, okay.
So if OPD dispatch takes more than one complaint about noise, then
Usually OPD gives, one warning for the parties anyway, and then they come back and then they'll take it if there's still a problem. At least that's what I've been told. Anyway.
I remember something like that.
Yeah.
Usually are very lenient on the first time.
Which is fair. I mean, sometimes you just don't know.
You know, your perception of noise could be different than others. I would just, I definitely want DPW to be covered for the amount of time that they have to put into cleaning up garbage or fixing whatever.
Yep.
But also I want to recognize the neighbors and their concerns.
So maybe, Len, to your point, Dave, to your point, I kind of don't like to say this, but let's see, think it through for a moment. Second complaint, and at the discretion of OPD, at the discretion of, right? I mean, I think at any time that they're rolling up, they're making a discretionary judgment about the noise level.
Mm-hmm.
If it is someone just being really sensitive about something that is a pretty normal level of noise, it's at their discretion whether they're going to, whether they would do that or not. That kind of addresses the point where if it's excessive noise, then that's problematic, then that would affect their deposit. But if it's within the range of expected noise or acceptable noise, it's at the discretion of OPD. And I guess I would trust their discretion because they're probably the ones that are most used to rolling up to scenes with music. So I'd be comfortable with that. Gets at your point and also keeps open the possibility that somebody wouldn't be kind of retaliatory simply because they're upset that there's music at a party.
Okay, so you're saying that you would not want, that you would want this to have an impact on?
I'm saying is that if we went the route that Lynn is suggesting, the second complaint, and something that says that it leaves at the discretion of OPD, that then opens the possibility that they can use their discretion to cite him and then in fact the $500. If that were the case. I'm trying to find that sweet spot between you two. I still need to think it through a little more because the city staff suggestion that takes care of itself in a different way, kind of trying to work that through as well.
I guess what's the fine on a noise complaint? I haven't heard that.
$100, I believe. It's between $100 and $250. I'm not sure if it hits that $250 threshold, the $250 and $15, or if it's just at the $100.
Is it
Then they just
enforceable have we ever had anybody take us to court to not pay the fine?
The fine is only assessed if they're found to be guilty in court. So you're,
Oh,
yeah, it's
that's
like
right.
it's receiving a ticket. So
Oh.
that person then goes to court, they pay the court fees, they pay any applicable fines.
So is that what you meant, Greg, that would take care of?
Yeah.
That makes,
Yeah, that's kind of where, if you say that if OPD issues a ticket, we take their deposit for $500, but then
That's
later on the
double.
court throws it out.
It's a
then
double,
fine.
it's a
Yeah.
double whammy, which is a problem.
alright, that conversation just convinced me we stay with the recommendation. My
Yeah.
question, we stay with the recommendation and stuff.
But if they get a noise, if there's, noise complaints, they'll be banned from future rentals anyway. So. Okay. Quiet over there, Scott. Anything you wanna add?
no, it's one of those, you wanna encourage people to use our parks.
I know.
Be respectful and
Right.
not have to kind of do this, but on the same token, when we come down through for the last little bit, we kind of have to do something, so.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
And like you said, Dave, this is something that's a start, and we can always, keep going back and forth.
Okay, so is everybody okay with moving this forward?
Yes.
And you will have something written to present?
For finance and
Okay.
council presumably after that.
Okay.
Because we have to adjust the fee schedule, correct?
Yeah, to add a deposit.
Oh, move forward to finance, that's right. Okay. If we're done with that, then that leaves deer management, so I'm gonna reopen this for public comment. Anybody have anything they wanna add about deer management?
Hi, can I go first?
Yeah.
Sure, state your name.
Yeah, I'm
For the
Susan
record.
Lettuce. I live on Union Street, and actually, I wanna just touch on something that you talked about, the block parties. Do you mind if I just bring something up real quick?
Yes, real quick.
So I just want to point out, and I will follow up with the clerk, but there is not an insurance product available to purchase for block parties. So Union Street has been looking into a block party for a couple of years, and we're getting tripped up because nobody wants to sign the indemnity form. And there is no product that's actually available for purchase. We've spoken to an insurance broker, gone through an online sort of system where you put in your, the event and everything, and because maybe because we don't have like alcohol or a bounce house or some of these things that might cause some more problems, there's no product available. So that's, if you're gonna talk about, block parties, that might be something to consider. So that's
Okay.
that. And then just with the deer management, just a couple things that I wanted to just point out or touch on. You might, you're talking about the AVID program. You might want to just say AVID or another similar program, because there's other programs that might make more sense for Oneonta. AVID isn't necessarily geared for an urban environment. So, through working with the colleges or, with somebody else, you might learn of another program that makes more sense. The use of the word harassment, deer harassment, it's on page 1-7, sub B. There's a lot of material that the DEC has put out about that, so you might want to check and just look and make sure any of your recommendations fall in line with what the DEC has said. On page 2, phase 2, proceeds so June 1st, 2024, phase 2, it proceeds after an analysis of phase 1. You might need to build in some time to analyze your phase 1 results, so you're not delaying the implementation of phase 2. Just something to think about. You mentioned AVID again under H, so same comment there. Phase 3, deer damage permits on downtown properties. The word downtown means different things to different people. So you might, if you know specifically what you're trying to say there, you might want to, tailor that word a little bit more. But downtown could mean Main Street to somebody, and it could mean just like Center City to other people. You don't know for sure what you're trying to say there. And, that could be okay for what you're doing right now, but you might want to make it more specific if you know exactly, something more specific that you're trying to say. And just a comment, I think I heard possibly in the last meeting, which I wasn't there for, but I tried to listen in, there was a comment made, we should try to look at what other municipalities have done. And I don't know if it was ever made clear that the program or the suggestions that the task force came up with was actually based, much of it was based on what other municipalities had done specifically regarding the deer damage permits, that was tailored from another plan from a different municipality. That's what I have.
More than one.
More than one.
More than one.
Okay, anybody else?
Oh, no, no, I'm just
Okay,
scratching.
okay. Betsy Holland, and I live on Cherry Street. We did send a listing of all the central New York municipalities that have deer management programs with a direct link to their
When did you
their
send that?
plans.
Did anybody else remember seeing that?
It was, you don't think you got it?
No, I got the last two that you sent with adjustments, recommendations.
It was before that.
Was
back when
that in our first
NYMER questions were coming out, because, I think it was included in one of those bundles. I can
Okay,
resend that to you,
okay.
but there are links to, other deer management programs, mostly in central New York, some down on, Long Island. The other thing was that suggestion that, the group came up with was, with the AVID program. In talking to Celinda, she said that the AVID program wasn't quite, the best program for urban/suburban area, because the forested areas are kind of all split up, and the data you get isn't going to be as accurate. It could be based on all kinds of other stuff. And she said that they recommended continuing to do a survey of the community. So the way she referred to it was customer satisfaction. And, you know, did the problem seem to be getting worse? Did it seem to be getting better? The AVID was pretty much designed to work in a forested area, not so much a suburban, urban area. The other thing was, I know, if you do use AVID, I don't, you did get the feedback?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah, I reread it today.
Oh, okay, good, oh, good, because it was actually designed to encourage citizen scientists to take part, because it does one thing that's really important, is engages more people in an educational piece. Not only do they get to learn to identify the trees and the wildflowers, but then they're more aware of what the damage is that's being caused by the deer. So it's kind of a hands-on getting to learn about the deer. I mean, we've kind of done a deep dive into it, so we have that information. But just your casual citizen, or church group, or school group, it could, and it's designed to be very easy to actually to do. The results are pretty robust from what they've said. Designers of the program, of course. But I actually downloaded the program onto my phone. You can just download it. It's an easy thing. You do it twice a year. You just mark out some places that that you're going to look at over different periods, and it's not. You don't have to create a bunch of structures. You just put some PVC poles and put a ribbon around it and go back and check it again. So there's that. I think this one, that was something that we thought would really be helpful, is to create some kind of a deer nuisance reporting tool. Because right now, people just if they, someone a deer jumped into their yard, and now they've got deer poop all over their yard and no garden. They just, they tell their friends, they tell other people, but there's no, it never occurred to me to report it, other than get those deer out of my yard. But that would give the city more data to go by. And also to where the location of the most deer damage is. So, like, I'm sure there are some areas where the deer population's probably lighter, and some places where it's heavier. So it would give you more information, I think it would also satisfy the people who are the angriest and the most upset that they're being heard and being seen, and they could, you know, it could be a simple form, it could be a dedicated email. I'm not sure, you know, how you'd want to set it up, but I do think that would be a very important piece of information. And it would justify if you needed to move to another. Or not. I mean, it might be that you get no one has a complaint, and that's a justification not to go any further.
The one thing I'll say is, I think there's an awful lot of moving parts to this. I don't think I need to tell anybody here this. All these different ideas need to be implemented. So not only we have a program that works, but we can slowly bring along people that don't think there's an issue, or don't want to address the issue, or they want to continue feeding the deer. So I think these are good ideas. I think, well, first of all, does anybody else have any other comments?
Just to add to the whatever reporting tool, it would be important to, like a letter to the editor, people need to leave their name. And consider that, because if you get one person who puts in 25 reports,
Yeah.
you know, I think we really need an honest look at what people are seeing, what damage is being done, and where it's being done. And I think people who are looking and are most affected will be willing to put their name down and where they live.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. I thank you for the work that you've done, the additional ideas, some of which I've already put into our document we're working on, so we can discuss it here. I think we're going to discuss some of the other ones you've mentioned. I'm going to close this part, and we're going to have a conversation. As usual, you're welcome to stay. But our goal is to hopefully get something finished today that can then either go forward to the council, or we have to have Mr. Merzick take a look at what we're developing first. Okay, because it's oh, and then we need to create it, turn it into a motion. So, okay. So I'll open up the discussion. Who wants to start? If you want me to start with what they suggested, I'm willing to do that, but if not, please. Okay.
Do you have a lot in phase 1 or phase 2 that you want to go over? Because you mentioned the downtown properties was one of my notes. In phase 3, I had just wordsmithed properties in city boundary, because I took the same thing as the definition of downtown could be different to other people.
Yeah, one of the things, I went through phase 1 and phase 2 and made the adjustments, and I completely missed phase 3 with that verbiage. Why don't we go through phase, do you want to go through phase 1 first? Just do one at a time? To go through them? So I have established an AVID program, but we could say,
Or similar.
change that, establish AVID or similar program.
I love that because AVID might change, that acronym might change in the
Yeah.
future, so why commit to something?
Personally, I do like the idea of doing an additional survey, but I think the survey is gonna tell us something different. It may not be quite as accurate. You may have people that just don't care enough, or they think it's fine not registering, and other people who are really angry are absolutely gonna be vocal. So, I mean, I'm on board with having an additional survey, but I think this program or a similar program or creating a deer nuisance reporting tool, I think are gonna be a little bit more helpful in showing whether we're making progress on this or not.
I think that is the best tool, frankly, to be able to allow us to
Which one?
see the nuisance reporting tool, to
Yeah.
allow us to see where it is. I mean, I think this would be pretty easy. Google Forms, address, problem, you could download that right into, I imagine we could probably even overlay that on a map and very quickly see the source of the problems and where they're at. I mean, we probably already anecdotally know, but this would provide more information for us moving forward. And if we keep doing this, and I think, annually we put all those results together, I think that could be a really important tool to understanding where our problems are taking place, and what's the scope of the problem, as well as providing much more data for next steps.
Okay, I'm writing create a deer nuisance reporting tool, must not be anonymous. Must be able to,
Person.
or, I mean, this is something that can be discussed later with the council, but at the very least, it's gotta be, maybe not the actual address, but it's gotta be pretty darn close to the region. Somebody doesn't wanna put in their address and where they live. Or we do wanna do that. I mean, what do you think?
I think it needs to be pretty robust, they won't put their address, at least put the block.
Tax map.
They might have already. Huh?
Well, must be, how about if I just put, must be able to identify, location, and it could be tax ID, number, address, et cetera, somehow.
I mean, what would be the purpose of not having it?
Some people get weird about it, I guess, but if they're gonna go on there, I suppose that,
Yeah, I want to make sure it's a legitimate complaint.
yeah, that's true, good point.
I would also, this is getting really ahead of ourselves, but drop-down menus with sorted problems, so that way it makes it from this data collection standpoint much more easier than going through all those individual comments. But to have a drop-down, target it, and then comments means that you can use the drop-down really quickly, be able to sort.
So drop-down menu
Right.
for ease of,
Like eating vegetation.
Right. Hit by a car, you can come up with some general types of things, it just helps us to be able to more easily work through that data. Because I don't wanna ask anybody to sit there and go through comments and then try to code
Your
those
verbal
meetings.
description already doesn't.
more objective
Right,
measures.
right, I mean, comments can be there, a little bit more background, but yeah.
Okay. Sort of adjusting this as we go. The next one we had listed was discuss possible fencing code changes at the council committee, or common council, I should say. No, council committee. I changed that to possible private property fencing code changes. And I'm not saying that I'm agreeing that I think these should be changed, because they're currently 7 feet in the back and 4 feet in front. But I think it's absolutely something that should be discussed, so we can check that off of whether or not that's something that people want changed. Because I absolutely realize you fence off somebody's property, you might keep the deer out there, it's gonna push the deer somewhere else. But we also don't want individual properties to turn into compounds either. So, but I think we should have that conversation. Any objection to switching that to private property, just to make it seem a little bit more? Okay. Then we have market deer hunting during regular season. City-owned property around the reservoir. Next, the change actually, it's a tiny change. Apply for a DMAP, and I clarified what DMAP is there. Deer Management Assistance Program. permit for city-owned property around the reservoir where hunting is currently allowed. Other than that, I didn't change anything. Does anybody else have anything they feel needs to be added in phase one? I'm sure there are some things I'm missing here.
Did you want to
Survey.
for the 70 deer harassment? That's just brought up, I didn't.
Well, that was one thing that was listed with DEC as one way to address it, whether or not it works or not. It's part of an education program, similar to deer-resistant plants, which I think we all know. There are no deer-resistant plants, not anymore anyway. And same as feeding restrictions, I've reviewed that with people in my ward, and there's still people doing that. But I still think it's part of an education program. I don't mean having a dog out, telling people to keep the dog on a leash and going after deer, or shooting something after deer. But shooing them away, I mean, just encouraging people that it's not something that, if you see the deer outside eating in your neighbor's yard, maybe you want to go out and shoo them away, and help your neighbor out. It's just one more tool that we can use.
You know
Unless
that
anybody has
doesn't
any
work.
objections.
I know I'm not supposed to talk, but I go out with pots and pans. They don't.
I know. It's the same way with bears. But,
That's our next committee.
Synchronize the deer, parent trap, where she's on.
yes, I know it
Oh,
sounds.
parent.
The two other things that we might want to add in here, I wasn't sure where we wanted to do that. The first one was addressing a second survey. And, well, maybe we want to tie them together, a second survey to see if there's improvement, as well as a timeline for assessing the phase one results. So, and I wasn't sure what we wanted to do and where we wanted to place that necessarily. See if anybody had any ideas.
I think the survey would be, people's attitudes about the deer are not gonna change in 1 year. But the data will show us whether things are changing, so I don't mind a survey, I just don't think it would be as useful after year one. I think that should be.
I think the reporting
Absolutely.
tool is gonna be more useful,
Right.
actually.
And I don't know whether we wanna write that into, phase two.
Survey.
Yeah, and that would give it 2 years. At the end of phase two or something like that, that's 2 years, that might provide a little better data.
Scott, anything you wanna add on that? What are your thoughts?
No, I kind of agree, you don't want the survey like one on top of the other. It's been an issue for a while, I agree with Mark, that, if you get them too close together, you're not gonna get accurate. That's what we're really looking for.
And the survey is only it's limited usefulness. I think, there's other ways that are gonna give us a little bit more data. That's my opinion though.
The reporting system or reporting tool is gonna have to be part of the marketing program, it's gonna have to be part of the marketing program.
Yeah.
Just getting the word out there that there's a tool available,
Yeah,
it's gonna take a while for everybody to know about it.
And I also think that the survey should be on the actual city website, when we launch it, not on.
okay, where did I put this? Okay, number 3. Yeah, I totally agree on that. about, so I added the resurvey the public, at the end of phase 2. So where do we wanna do, because the beginning of phase 2, let's say June 1st was a loose, that's the date that we threw in there. Starts immediately after after an analysis of phase 1 results, but what is that analysis? I was thinking about this today. An analysis is an ongoing analysis. It's not like we're gonna go the whole year and then say, all right, let's look at everything. Am I wrong on that?
I think it needs to be ongoing, absolutely. So all the data analysis needs to be phase 2 and phase 3. I mean, at this point, if this is not a one and done, we're gonna need to
Right.
implement processes for analyzing this. And in the future, wherever this might go, we're gonna need to know where, we need to target things. Where's the biggest problems, where is it occurring? So yeah, we need to keep, again, I think that reporting tool becomes the easiest thing to keep going. It's just the legwork on
Well,
the data afterwards.
if we go to phase 2, because there's nothing definite that we need to go to phase 2. We all know that, but let's say what's the marker, where's the line that says, all right, we need to implement phase 2 then, after phase 1? Nothing's changed?
I would suggest at this point, we don't know. Because we don't have that data, the reporting tool data, nor, the point is to try to establish the EVIT or whatever other similar programs that allow us to measure and understand impacts. At this point, we don't have it throughout the city, but we know what the impacts are. We might also want to, again, and I think make it really clear, well, there you go, establish coordinator. I think we passed the coordinator with establishing what that threshold is. We're talking about having a coordinator for this, multi-year management program. That coordinator is going to need to kind of manage the data collection, the data analysis, and set the thresholds. What is an acceptable level of decrease? That would mean that you should stay with phase 1 and keep on repeating these, or do we need phase 2? I don't feel like we can make a determination right now when we don't have data on this.
And that might be a discussion in the coming weeks or months about what that person's job would be also. Okay. So,
Because you might see a downturn in phase 1, that these are working, and you want to extend that data out before you go to phase 2. I'm not saying you would, I'm saying you could,
yeah.
Or we might sort of see where we made it better in one part of the city, made it worse in the other part.
Right.
Right.
Which I could very well see that happening too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe in phase 2, we need to remove June 1st, 2024, and just keep that open for proceeds after analysis of phase 1 results. Because it almost makes it sound like we're moving phase 2 in June, but we really need to analyze that data. Just keep it open-ended.
Yeah.
I have part of it.
Right.
Okay, so what I have here under phase 2, I did add a little bit to number 1, because based on what was suggested and it didn't quite look right. I said, depending upon the phase 1 results, apply for a DMAP permit for specific properties within the city limits for the regular deer hunting season. That's how we wordsmith them? Okay.
Just got, the most important part was to cover the word downtown.
Yeah. Other than that, I didn't make any suggestions of any changes. Does anybody else have any changes they want to make to that?
Dave, did you just say you guys resurveyed the public at the end of phase 2?
Yes.
DK?
Yes, that was after all of that. I mean, I still have, we still have the A through J for the DMAP permit where it's recommended by the DEC and what exactly it is. I think that's more for the benefit of council and anybody reading this, more than anything.
And then H, we would make the change next to added program or similar program.
Yes. Good catch.
Same with phase 3, letter A.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else in phase 2 they want to add or change? If not, then we need to change in phase 3 downtown. How do we want to say that?
You just said it's below, right, properties within city limits.
Are any of you guys online looking at this? Maybe not seeing my typing. Good.
No pressure on you today.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna put in the nuisance reporting system tool?
I put that under phase 1.
Is that what you mean by number 4, the data collection?
Wait, where are you? Oh, back up under,
I'm reading this and I must be missing it. I'm just wondering, where is that tool?
okay, I added create a deer nuisance reporting tool under phase 1.
Right.
And I labeled it wrong. Darn it. It's number 2 now. All my numbering is messed up. This,
So in tonight's handout, we would look at as number 1, need to collect and interpret data, and you went on to say that we need to have a deer nuisance reporting tool or system.
yeah, we have to establish Avid or similar program, and we go through what that is. Number 2 is create a deer nuisance reporting tool. Must not be anonymous, must be able to identify location, drop-down menu for ease of assessing data, or ease of collecting and assessing data. 3 is discuss possible private property fencing code changes at the council committee. 4 is market deer hunting during regular season to city-owned property around the reservoir. 5 is apply for a DMAP permit for city-owned property around the reservoir where hunting is currently allowed. 6 is encourage hunters to apply for the deer management permit. 7 is education program, where I've included fencing for plants, not necessarily around property. So it's natural and artificial plant barriers, deer harassment, deer resistant plants, feeding restrictions, and involve the environmental board for the review of that plan. 8, begin discussions regarding future DMAP permits with Otsego Now, Job Corps, Hartwick College, Oneonta City School District, and SUNY Oneonta. 9 is council discussions for DMAP permit for a DMAP permit for additional city parcels for August 1st, 2024. I should say begin council discussions. 10 is research SUNY Binghamton Deer Management Program.
Thank you.
Can I suggest that we pull forward from phase 1, number 1 and number 7, which is basically our assessment program? Well, I'm not sure where the deer nuisance reporting tool, I think where we had that, but that as well.
That's number 2.
So 1, 2, and 7 be pulled forward to phase 2 and phase 3. We're gonna need to continue to assess, and look at the data. and collect the data, and we're gonna need to continue to educate from now until there's no more deers left in this world, frankly.
You're
Not that
really feel about it.
I'm pushing for that. Just, we're always gonna, this.
In your yard.
It's always gonna be a problem.
Okay, so you wanna put that include that in phase 2 and phase 3?
Yeah, I just think that, make sure it's really explicit that we're continuing to collect data and continuing to educate.
Do you want me to just say continue
Could you
to
say,
collect?
consider, continue phase 2, well, also in there, just put in conjunction with phase 1, or continuance of phase 1, continues in phase 2, phase.
Continue to collect data on,
Because you're still gonna have to do all that as you're still doing, as you go into phase 2, and then you're still have to do all phase 1 and phase 2 as you go into phase 3.
Mhm.
They're all gonna be connected.
Right.
nuisance.
And then if there's a phase 4 or phase 5.
How do you want to include because the Avid or similar program, the deer nuisance reporting tool are very similar to each other, but then the education program is different. So how do we want to write that? That could be, see what I'm doing here.
That should say continue, within phase 2, continued phase
Education
1
program.
subsection 7 throughout phase 2.
Oh, I see
Well,
what
I
you
think you're getting too down in the weeds, because no matter what you do, if we go to phase 2, you're still always gonna have to do everything that's going on in phase 1 as you implement phase 2.
Oh, yeah.
As you go into, if you end up going to phase 3, you're still gonna have to do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So I think you can just say, in conjunction with, on phase 2, you can put like number 2, all this is in conjunction with phase 1, and in phase 3, number 2 would be in conjunction with phase 1 and phase 2.
That's what I'm doing.
That'd be the easiest way to write it.
Where am I?
So to say that hear me out, if I had it wrong, in phase 2, say in conjunction with phase 1, I mean phase 2. In phase 3, in conjunction with phase 1 and 2. So that it's basically, it's simultaneous, all this is taking place the entire time. That's just an easy way to put it. Does that capture what you're saying?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need to put proceeds after analysis of phase 1 results, since I have. Maybe I can wordsmith this into number 1 here, move that down to here. Yeah.
Okay.
And okay. All right. Okay, the only thing I need to wordsmith a little bit is moving what I wrote on phase 2 before and wrapping it into its number 1, but that won't take more than a minute. I can do that when we're done here. So, does anybody have anything else they want to add or change? Okay. All right, so from here, do you want me to send this, do we want to change this to a motion first and then send it to Dave Mercy? I don't know what's easier with this.
Honestly, the motion is probably going to be relatively generic. I think they can be done in this week. So you'd be adopting the plan or the policy as presented to make it a little prettier sounding in the motion, but
Okay,
anything that Dave does would not impact the motion.
okay, so we can. All right, for any input afterwards, and I'll CC you in on that email. So, okay.
Could you open it up for just one suggestion before you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And when you were discussing how to document whether it's working, phase one, you can contact the DEC. They will keep track of how many, you have to report to them when a deer is taken and where.
Right.
So you can add in there that to contact the DEC at the end of phase one to see how it's different for the past few years even. It wouldn't have to just be a year, but it might give you some numbers.
So you're suggesting routine reporting to DEC of data results?
No, I'm saying that you should reach out to the DEC and find out how many deer were taken in the city, or properties in the city limits.
Gotcha.
They have that data for every hunting season.
Okay.
So you could actually
Add that to the
see, has it made a huge difference between phase one and phase two and phase three?
Yeah.
So that's something that we should put in phase one, I would think.
Yeah, establish
I
baseline.
would think at the end of phase one.
Yeah, I think we need to establish a baseline. What's the numbers right now?
Exactly.
And what's after we've
Right,
implemented
and,
the program? what are the
even
numbers?
though it's just a year, it may show you
Right.
a huge difference, and so maybe you continue with phase one before going on to phase two.
Right.
Or if there's little difference,
But does the DEC differentiate where the deer, what tax parcel that deer was collected at?
I think
you mean specifically the
Yeah.
property?
Yeah,
I don't know about
Are you
that, but
talking
you,
deer tags?
yeah.
yeah,
No, the deer tag is, deer
No,
tag just says, yes, you know, who the hunter was, you know, that you had.
it doesn't say, so the DEC doesn't know where,
but don't,
It's not a specific, it'll say your region, it'll say like, but not like it's gonna be, all this was taken within the city limits,
Yeah.
or, you know, like at 122.
But doesn't a
Creative
hunt-
Lake,
when a
it's just
hunter-
generic.
when you get a deer, don't you have to report that location?
It's not a specific
It's-
location. It
right,
doesn't
but-
need that
but it would
specific
be
location
within-
for it.
You could ask within a certain region, they could maybe narrow it down.
Yeah, I'll say if it's in the town or the city, it's not gonna say
Well, that's,
the
yeah,
specific, like, I was answering his question.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
The specific, it doesn't get very specific.
Because
Yeah.
it's tax parcel specific.
you know, I didn't, that's what I was worried about, because I looked at some of the data at the DEC website, and they do show lots of ways to break down the data of how many deer were taken, and they do break it down by location, but it's a very
Yeah.
vast
It's a region.
location.
Yeah.
Like they might say zone 5 took, say 10,000 deer this hunting season.
Yeah,
Well, zone 5 is a very big zone. It covers a lot of counties and stuff.
but this is why I think all these, including either the deer nuisance reporting tool, looking at an Avid program or something similar, that might be more helpful to us, because it's gonna show us whether there's improvement in that.
Right. Yeah, no one point of information is gonna tell us everything.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
All of this will tell a story.
And I'm hoping that whoever we put as the point person for all this would use all the tools in the toolbox.
Well, that's gonna be the council's job anyway, to come up with a description of what they are looking for from this person too. So, okay, do we have anything else that we wanna add? Are we good? Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you guys for all the work. I think this is a great place to start. I think it's gonna be a working document for years to
Yeah.
come. And I think this is, if I remember right, Dave, I think you've said this, the furthest we've ever gotten,
Yeah.
so.
Well, we appreciate all the work you've put into it
Yeah,
as well,
thank
and the
you.
support.
Very much.
Well, I hope we have an impact, that this makes an impact on it, so. I walked out of my house today and a deer had gotten right through the fence in my front yard and was eating everything on the front lawn, so.
Mhm.
The deer better not get to my beans. I've been waiting for my
We're gonna push all the deer out of Center City down to the 6th Ward.
Right. Oh, we could corral them.
All right, do we have, anything anybody else wants to add, Brenda?
Just real quick, Greg, did you were talking last time about the survey for City Hall. Did that go out?
I believe so.
It did go out. It went out last Friday morning at 8 a.m. Hit Facebook website. It's posted in various locations through the city. There is also a QR code for people to take the survey if they want. I was hoping to stall enough time and ramble long enough that I could give you some results. I can tell you that we've not had many people take us up on the paper survey. I think we've received one. We've had between 10 to 12 people fill out the survey online, not as big of a response as I think we would have liked to have seen. Some results make me question the input as people still tell us they're coming to City Hall to see personnel. But we have a fair amount that are requesting either maintaining Monday through Friday 8 to 4, or we've had, I was a little surprised by this, a lot of people saying Monday through Thursday 8 to 4, as opposed to even adding an extra on to each end of the day. So it's been a little surprising in their results.
Monday through Thursday,
Monday through Thursday 8 to 4.
3-day weekend, that'd be
Right.
great.
Yeah, oh, nice.
The only thing I'd like to add to us as a committee and to Greg is, a lot of municipalities, I said this earlier when we were discussing this, that our staff doesn't close their offices for lunch. You know, you're always able to get the finance or the city clerk, or whatever, make sure they're staffed. The other thing is, a lot of municipalities you go to, they're not there Monday through Friday, where you can do, a lot of offices close within that, whether they're trying to get caught up on paperwork or whatever. So I think, as we really look at the results and stuff, I think we need to kind of keep that in as we try to make it as easy as we can for the public, but at the same token, we all know that as we've cut over the years and stuff, and we made it harder on our staff here at the city hall and stuff, that maybe we need to look at. It's okay to back away and say we're gonna do whatever to, the foster Brown stuff that we've been battling for a while. So,
I think, I agree with you, Scott. The only thing I would want us to consider is if we're looking to shut down in the middle of the day at all, I'm not saying we are, but if we are for during lunch, I think we need to make other changes and make it easier for people to do things online, the city hall first. Because I think some people still want to be able to run out at lunch to, maybe it's to pay a bill or something.
yeah, I wasn't advocating like to shut down during lunch, what I was really advocating for is, I think it's still okay for us as a council to look at the 4 days here in City Hall.
Sure.
And, cause I'm just saying other municipalities, they do take time to either shut down for lunch, or they actually take, where you can only go to your clerk's office like Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or your finances only on Tuesday, you know what I mean? To do certain things if you're gonna go within the city. So I think it's okay to look at all the options, and work from there, that's all.
I had two other quick updates.
Sure.
Things we talked about the last meeting, the school zone speed limits. When you asked if we could look at other school zones, I did drive around and check the times. We have school zone speed limits in place at all the other schools in the city. So I don't think there's any recommendations for additional school speed limit zones other than the one we're adding. But
The concern was from the Fifth Ward residents was the speed approaching those school zones. I've had numerous complaints, especially West End Ave and Morgan Ave, because people are using that block to cheat over to get to the school also. So
I don't
Yeah,
think
that's-
school
that's
zone
interpretation.
itself can be expanded further than it is now, just based on the regulations, so the 50-mile-an-hour area. Other than going to 25.
In those areas with a traffic study or an engineering study or changing the citywide limit. But again, I'd be interested to see, say Morgan Ave or West End Ave a little bit further, if we actually measure the speed, I would venture a guess that it's probably within that 25 now, although there are going to be outliers.
Sure.
But if that's,
You have to do the 85%, right?
yeah, so it should be set around 85th percentile.
So, yeah, I'll be curious once we put up our data collection, see what it turns up.
One thing that does help in the morning, because I'm over at GP all the time, is having our police officer at the corner of West End and,
Chestnut.
no,
A block in, probably.
it's a few blocks in, it's the last side street.
Butler.
Is that Butler? I never remember. That, I think, slows traffic down significantly, and they're not necessarily there for that, they're there to help the kids cross the road.
Yes.
But I think that makes people think before rushing through there. But I think they're only there from about 8:15 to 8:30 or so, it's not that long, and then they're there in the afternoon also. So, but I'd be interested to see what the speed set shows also.
So, Greg, going down Chestnut Street right before Nick's, on that corner right there, there's that overgrown brush. Kinda, I noticed it today when I was going down through, kinda comes out a little bit, there's I can't remember the road that comes up.
King Street.
Is that owned by us in the city, or is that a private?
Privately owned at Hillside there, I think,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's which parcel that is, how far Nick's Diner parcel goes. I think at one point,
There's a residence there.
the residents.
I was wondering if we could like trim that back, you might be able to see that corner, make it a little safer coming down.
Actually, that just grew up this year. It was cut down earlier this year by DPW. They hit it once already. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I just noticed it today because I'm going a long way back to my house instead of like going through road construction on Oak Street, so.
Yeah, we can take over that.
Greg, did you have a second?
Yeah, so State Street stop sign at Hazel Street. David Shear, one of the residents from Woodside Ave, had mentioned or suggested adding what's called a supplemental sign or a plaque below the stop sign that says two-way. That's actually not something you can do. You can't say two-way or three-way like you see some stop signs that say all-way. It's just a terminology thing, but you can say oncoming traffic does not stop or traffic from the left does not stop. So I think we can add that at that location on both sides. So indicating that traffic coming from Hickey Street rather does not stop. So I talked with DPW today. That's my
Sounds good.
Anybody have anything else?